Hey, Hawkeye fans, welcome to the Hawk Central Radio Hour podcast edition. We're trying something new here with the StreamYard app and putting this up on YouTube in addition to other platforms. But Kennington Smith, my colleague at the Des Moines Register, happy to have you join me in this venture. We've got a little bit of a format, but just wanted to introduce ourselves to Hawk fans, reintroduce ourselves to Hawk fans in this new, little bit of a new platform this time.
Yeah, excited to get a chance to do this. And I've been out here for about a year. You've been out here for much longer, so people probably know what you look like. A lot of people probably have no idea what I look like. So, this is me. So getting a chance to put a face to a name, getting a chance to maybe see our expressions and how we think through things and talk through things through a lot of the various topics I think will be useful. I think it's just something, maybe fresh or exciting that we can add to what we do here. So excited to get it going, and we're still working on a name. So bear with us for a few weeks as we get our creative juices flowing. But and I'm excited for this to be a regular part of what we do here at Hawk Central.
Yeah, for sure. And we're open to changing the music too. I mean, I've had the same intro music for a long time. Kennington's our resident DJ. For those of you that don't know, on the side, definitely a side hustle with the DJ business. So I'm kind of putting him in charge of the music, but that's still a work in progress. So if you have recommendations, let us know. Also, this will be kind of how we do our post-game podcasts as well, which are super popular. So anyway, we're going to try to keep this Tuesday show that we're going to have it every Tuesday and every post-game. We're going to try to keep this Tuesday show in about the 30-minute range. So to start out the topics, we're going to pick 3 each Tuesday, first down, second down, third down, try to do about 10 minutes each. In Kennington, we came away from today's pre-South Dakota State press conference with Kirk Ferentz and players, and there really was a clear first topic that we're going to talk about today. Our first down is definitely what is going on with the receivers room. And is Alec Wick the best player on the team all of a sudden?
Right. It was crazy. We were talking to different players about Alec Wick, and Riley Moss says something like, I don't know if he has stickum on his hands, but he makes difficult catches. And then Arlen Bruce said that he made the greatest catch that he's ever seen in person, which is saying a lot for somebody like Arlen, who plays receiver and has seen a lot of football, to say that. And even Connor Colby corroborated the story and said, oh, yeah, I don't pay attention much. I'm usually focused on the guys running at me, but Alec Wick had a diving catch across the middle a few weeks ago that was pretty crazy. So he's also involved in the return competition also. Kirk Ferentz added that wrinkle in there too. He said Alec Wick is somebody that they're considering. So from walk on and not on the 2 deep at any point up until fall camp to somebody who never drops passes and can return kicks and is just super consistent and potentially could be a starter on Saturday, given the news that we heard about Keegan Johnson, which segues us just into this whole receiver discussion, that Kirk Ferentz wasn't exactly sold that he would play on Saturday. He said that it's touch and go. He said that there's a chance. We'll see. There weren't any definitive words there. It was a lot of, we'll just kind of play it by ear and see what happens. So there could be a chance that Alec Wick actually, in his first collegiate game, starts in the season opener, which would be crazy and a pretty cool story for somebody who's an Iowa City native, getting a chance to do that.
Yeah, a lot to unpack here. I mean, the Alec Wick question was obviously a little bit in jest, but yeah, it is a serious situation in Iowa's wide receiver room. The depth chart comes out on Monday. Just to tease our second topic, we'll deal with the depth chart, which I was not a fan of the lack of information in there, but we'll get to that. Right. But the receiver depth chart did list Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce on the top line. And then Alec Wick, as we mentioned, from Regina, and Jack Johnson of West Des Moines Valley on the 2 lines. So you're wondering, where did everybody go? Well, Nico Reganey is out with a foot injury for at least the next couple of weeks, so he's going to miss the Iowa State game as well. So that's bad news. We know Deontay Vines has had the wrist issue. He's out for at least half the season. And we know Jackson Ritter is out for the whole season. We know Brody Brecht had been slowed by a hamstring. He is back at practice, so that's good news. But as Kennington mentioned, I brought up Keegan Johnson to Kirk Ferentz today, and I was like, is he ready for a full workload? I mean, we saw him back at practice photos, and Ferentz is like, well, yeah, just like you said, Kennington. He's like, he's got a chance. And I was like, I asked him, I was like, you mean a chance to play? Yeah, a chance to play. So he has a chance to play Saturday. I do think Keegan will play Saturday. We don't know for sure, but I don't think he's going to be playing 60 snaps. So this is a dire wide receiver room right now. And if Keegan doesn't play, this is the crazy part to think about. If Keegan does not play on Saturday, Iowa will have one player, one wide receiver who has played a college snap, and that is a true sophomore in Arlen Bruce IV. So it is really a dire situation right now for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, most definitely. But I think that in what you said about Arlen Bruce, I think that it is somewhat comforting that he is the one who was first expected to take a major leap anyway. This is somebody who had a really big freshman year and was kind of stepping into his own, and somebody who was challenged by receivers coach Kelton Copeland to go from good player to great player. But he's also benefited from the fact that he's really the only receiver on the roster, scholarship-wise at least, that has been healthy from the bowl game up until this point. He's been a full participant pretty much the entire way. So getting a chance to get that full workload, work with the ones exclusively, build that rapport with Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla, and really progress. He seems like he's in line to not only be the number one receiver on Saturday, but maybe stepping into that role for an extended period of time, depending on what happens with Keegan and with Nico. So I think that if you are in a situation where you have one player who's only played in a game, I think you're pretty comfortable with the fact that it is Arlen, and that he has been very, very, very consistent throughout the offseason up until this point. Kirk Ferentz said that he says this often, that practice is often a good indicator of what you're going to see in the game. And he said he feels really good about what Arlen is going to put on the field based on these last few weeks of practice. So I'm excited to see him get out there. He said that there is no hesitation in his mind to return kicks, even though there is limitations at receiver and numbers. He wants to return kicks. I've said before that I see him as a potential Deebo Samuel-X player, somebody who can catch and potentially run, return kicks, do a lot of different things. I know he's not shying away from that. So, by attrition, this is potentially an opportunity for him to really become kind of that do-it-all player in Iowa's offense.
So, yeah, Iowa literally has one healthy scholarship receiver that has been consistently healthy, we should say. So they're very thin there. We could see Jacob Bostic, a true freshman there. We'll see. We just don't know. I think it's possible that Iowa keeps the rotation really tight on Saturday. Even if Johnson plays, they may only go 4 deep. They do, and we're not dismissing. Obviously, we've heard good things about Alec Wick. We've heard good things about Jack Johnson. I mean, I remember Kelton Copeland, it was either 1 or 2 radio shows ago. It must have been last year, talking about Jack Johnson. If someone wants to go find that episode, he made a comment in our wide receiver conversation about watch out for Jack Johnson. I'll have to go try to find that one because we kind of really didn't bring him up, even like in the spring game. Remember, it was Caden Weechin. He was the walk-on sensation. Right. So to speak, of that game. But Jack Johnson had a lot of catches in that game from Joe Labus, if I recall correctly, during the spring practice. It's a kid from West Des Moines Valley. It's creating opportunity, and that's the deal. I think what you hope for as a Hawkeye fan, if you're following this, is that this creates more depth at a position that really needs depth. When Nico Reganey returns to full health, when Keegan Johnson returns to full health, if Wick and Jack Johnson, for example, can be those guys, then maybe you've got 5-6 deep at receiver all of a sudden, and all these guys are coming back next year. So maybe the room can be in good shape long term, but obviously short term, it's can they beat South Dakota State on Saturday with these guys?
Right. And that's a good point about Jack Johnson, because when I talked to Kelton Copeland during Team Media Day, he said that he's somebody who could have already had a role on special teams had it not been for injuries holding him up. So he has been impressive to the point where he's earned the right to play in some capacity. So they've seen enough out of him to know that he's pretty reliable and that he can be trusted in in-game situations. I think that it is an interesting point what you said about opportunity to build the depth. I think that the fact that Brody Brecht is practicing and is available to play is huge because, that's the kind of big body receiver that they have been missing and somebody who they really had high expectations for coming into the program. And he's just been consistently injured, somebody who hasn't dealt with injuries before he arrived at Iowa. So the fact that he is available is going to be really big. I hope he gets a chance to play because I would just like to see what he can do. And Jacob Bostic is just a name that by way of attrition has had to grow up faster than probably Copeland would have wanted him to. He's playing all three receiver positions, which probably wouldn't have happened if everybody was healthy. So that's just building depth in itself that he's, gaining kind of expertise at every position. And he's flashed a few times throughout fall camp. We saw during the Kids Day scrimmage. So I wouldn't discount him playing on Saturday also. And I think that he is among the freshmen that are probably going to, avoid that red shirt this year just because they're probably going to need him to contribute throughout the year.
Exactly. Yeah, there's probably 8 true freshmen at least, I think, that could see the field on Saturday. We'll get into that more in Wednesday's Hawk Central radio show. But for now, let's move on to our second topic. It's second down here in the podcast. And let's talk about this depth chart that came out Monday. Very, very disappointing. Pieces of lacks of information and really no clarity today. I mean, I guess it's just a matter of Iowa. Kirk Ferentz just does not want to give out any information, even about who's going to be his kicker, who's going to be his return man. There isn't even a return man spot on the depth chart. They did list Aaron Blom as the number 1 kicker, but that doesn't mean anything. According to Ferentz today, because it's the decision hasn't been made or he's not telling us. What else? Lucas Van Ness at backup defensive tackle. That was an odd thing considering he was the number 1 defensive end at the Kids Day. It looked to me, Kennington, that they didn't even update anything on the front 7 at all. I think they just copied and pasted.
Right.
The coaches, I'm saying, not the SID people. They just said, hey, that's our depth chart, and just left it at that because they made no changes to that. But that aside, what I guess stands out to you as far as what I would say are depth chart errors? I mean, we know Ferentz list said that the kicker thing hasn't been decided. I don't know what do you want? What jumps out to you as far as the depth chart and kind of the curiosities with it?
Yeah, I think that starting with the defensive line, the fact that Van Ness, who I believe was also defensive end at the last spring practice in April, and then he was still listed at a defensive tackle in the initial fall depth chart, and then with this one, it's just kind of odd because
they're showing us now, yeah.
Right, literally.
There's no way he's going to be back up defensive tackle.
That's the only explanation. Like, when we talked to Jay Neiman in the spring, he said Van Ness has been exclusively at end after playing exclusively tackle last fall. And then when you talk to Van Ness during media day, it's like, oh yeah. A lot of it was just pretty much like adjusting to end. And then what we see in the Kids Day scrimmage, and then we see the depth chart, which is really funny because I feel like you said something on Twitter like it would be comical if he was listed as at defensive tackle, and that's exactly what we got. So I saw a lot of fans on Twitter saying things like, "Oh, depth charts mean nothing at Iowa, and it's just all we'll just see what happens, and it's all a fluid situation." And Kirk Ferentz said as much in his opening statement. It was kind of one of those things where his opening statements are pretty long. But he kind of uses like these like cryptic things like in the midst of like these intros.
Yes, he does. Yes, you're picking up on that. You're picking up on it.
Right. Yeah, I'm starting to get my feet under me. I'm learning this. Yeah, exactly. I'm learning the system and all of those things. But he says these like cryptic things in the middle of like his statements and then just keeps going and it doesn't really get addressed afterwards. Like when he said today that depth-wise, we're pretty fluid at certain positions. We'll just see what happens on Saturday, which is just like, to me, that basically means that there are several guys that we might have listed at one spot that probably aren't going to play there. They might line up at somewhere else. We don't know what we're going to do at this spot and that spot. So when I looked at the depth chart, I just had to I chuckled a little bit because, you know, as reporters, we want to get things out quickly. Obviously, we want to get things out accurately too. But we try to pre-write some things that we think are going to happen. And I remember when the depth chart dropped, and I messaged you, and I was just like, half of the things that I had on here that I was anticipating are just not. They're just not there. They're not present. So. You know, that was one thing. Defensive line. I think Connor Colby at right guard was something that I wasn't expecting. I thought that he was going to be out there at tackle, which you know, we're going to get into the offensive line in a little bit. But that's something that's not out of the realm of possibility, that he plays a lot of tackle. On Saturday, he practiced at both positions today, so that's something else that stuck out to me as well. I was wondering if there were going to be any true freshmen that potentially cracked that. I know that Aaron Graves made a large impression during the Kids Day scrimmage, and fans said that they would be foolish to redshirt him. You know, I know fans were possibly looking for Xavier Wampa's name on the 2 line at free safety. TJ Hall is another player who I have been anticipating on the 2D pretty much since spring practice, just listening to what Phil Parker has said about him and other players that are veteran in the secondary have said about him. But to no avail on the first one. I think that we're going to have to continue to monitor these things. But I think that, at least for me personally, I'm going to start taking these things with much more of a grain of salt than I had in depth charts past.
Yeah, but the problem I have with that and the way Iowa does its business with the depth charts is, like, they have a very passionate fan base. Everyone listening to this podcast, they want to see the depth chart just as much as us in the media do. It's not like a media thing. It's like you're literally like you're showing one thing on the field and you're not putting that on a piece of paper. It doesn't even make sense to be like either that lazy or that, you know, just not even care about the people that follow your program, especially the fans, because the fans are asking like, oh, you know, hey, you know, they're pretty excited about Lucas Van Ness at right end. So why not put that on a piece of paper, you know? And why not even like just list the 3 return guys that you've got, you know, in the mix at least.
And just do like the or.
There was just no effort into the depth chart, which is what they want. And the only change was really with the injuries, and that's was with Reganey. And we should mention that David Davidkoff is out for the season with an unspecified medical issue, according to Kirk Ferentz. So that does take offensive tackle depth down just a little bit, as we refer to the injuries in our previous segment. But I don't know. I'm just a little bit annoyed, I guess, about the way the depth chart was handled. But it's, you know, it's their choice. I don't know. Like you said, you know, Brendan Diaz-Fernandez. Is he really the backup cornerback to Riley Moss? Or is it TJ Hall? That's like, I have a good feeling it might be TJ Hall, but we'll see. You know,
yeah.
They just want us to see on Saturday, I guess.
Yeah.
And at that point, they can't hide it anymore.
The backup, I mean, it could end up being Cooper DeJean, like in a perfect scenario.
I think he may start. I think Cooper DeJean may start.
Exactly. But
if they go 4-3.
Yeah. In a full, I guess what I'm saying is, like, in a full healthy secondary, when you're looking at the corners and you're ranking them, you have Riley Moss and Terry Roberts and Jamari Harris. Those would be your top 3 and maybe no order. But then after that, you know, is it Cooper DeJean or is it Diaz-Fernandez or is it TJ Hall? Like, those are the type of things that I would probably question, or I have questions on, that I would like to see specified on the depth chart. But we're going to have to wait for Jamari Harris to get healthy, who wasn't listed on the depth chart either. And Farron said he was dealing with some medical issues. He hasn't participated since the bowl game. He wasn't a part of spring practice either. So we'll just have to see. And I guess it could be worse. So there are certain schools that don't even have depth charts. Did you see that Steve Sarkisian at Texas said he's not releasing a depth chart all season?
Yeah, I mean, Harbaugh doesn't do it at Michigan, but I don't know. I mean, that's fine. If they don't want to do depth charts anymore, if they decide to get to that point, then it's not going to go well, because people will get information through other channels and they're not going to like that either. So just put out the depth chart, make it as accurate as possible. I get what Ferentz is doing. I don't think he wants to put Aaron Graves as the number 2 defensive tackle, for example, right now. I think it's just not the way he's going to do business. So I know a lot of people panicking about Xavier Wampa not being on the depth chart. He is going to play. He's going to play the full season, Ferentz said today. Though I think that's special teams for now. But, if you move Van Ness to end, then Graves pops in there a defensive tackle, and you subtract somebody out of defensive end. So, off the depth chart. But we'll see what happens. All right, our final topic, Kennington Smith, third down. Let's move to a positive development, I think. Probably the most positive development of the last week and a half, which would be, and maybe all fall camp. It's a topic I wrote about shortly after Media Day. And I was really encouraged by everything I heard about the offensive line. But then the injuries crept up after that. Mason Richmond did not participate in Kids Day. Ferentz mentioned on the podcast with Gary Dolphin that other injuries had cropped up. We didn't see certain guys in photos. Now it seems like they are pretty much at full strength at offensive line. And Richmond's out there. Nick DeYoung is back. Jack Plum's out there. Connor Colby. So now they're full complement of tackles. We got confirmation that, Jennings Dunker's available. They've been practicing Mike Myslinski. Logan Jones is at center. I mean, they seem healthy, and it seems to be a position group that Ferentz is excited about. And so is actually Spencer Petras. So he mentioned very distinctly that this offensive line is going to be better this year.
Yeah, that was another funny depth chart development. You asked about Jennings Dunker. It's like, is he going to play? And Ferentz was like, oh, yeah, he's on the depth chart. And we're like, no, he wasn't.
I was like, no, he's not on the depth chart, actually. You did not put him on there.
Yeah, Kirk's like,
you didn't update the depth chart.
Yeah, exactly. So
you failed to update the depth.
But no, it is good news. When you look at the spring football depth chart, obviously losing Justin Britt was a big injury at left guard. But outside of him, pretty much the 4 of the 5 guys that you ended spring practice with, as you thought that these were going to be your starters, are the same guys that are here now entering week 1, with Tyler Ellsbury, who has been a consistent riser of the depth chart since bowl prep. If I remember leading up to the Kentucky game, Brian Ferentz pinpointed him specifically as one player on the offensive line who has really impressed him during bowl practice and thought that he was going to continue to take that step forward. And he's done that. And he's there slated at left guard.
Left guard, yeah. Yep.
I think that you have to be optimistic about the offensive line just based on where this offensive line was a year ago today. I mean, Kyler Schott with his foot injury, Justin Britt was injured at the start of the year, Cody Ince was injured at the start of the year as well. Those were your top 3 interior guys. You had to move Connor Colby, who had played tackle exclusively up until that point, to right guard. It was a lot of moving parts, and I think that this year there's been a lot more cohesion, at least in the interior. I know that they've had injuries at tackle, but at least the interior of that line you feel like has been there and has been present, and they've been able to kind of build some chemistry. The fact that Mason Richmond is back on the depth chart, I think, is huge. Jack Plum has been pretty constant in terms of not being injured. Nick DeYoung on the 2 line, that's encouraging because he's been in a walking boot since we can remember. I think that the big thing, especially at tackle, is just staying healthy, because Jack Plum was listed as Mason Richmond's backup. So if something were to happen at tackle, you're looking at those 3 guys as the candidates to hold that position down. I still think that there's a good chance that Connor Colby will play tackle at some point this year, just because football is a game of attrition. But I think that you have to feel optimistic about where the line is. And I think that one of the biggest takeaways that I took from Ferentz's presser is how impressed he's been with Logan Jones, who transitioned from defense to offense, but he really hasn't wavered in the sense that they haven't really given much thought to anybody else starting besides him at center. I mean, he was the number 1 center throughout spring practice, and They said that Mike Myslinski was going to challenge him for that center spot, but now Mike is listed at another position. So it really feels like Logan Jones has taken that center position and ran with it, and he's ready to step into a role where he could become an impact player. If it doesn't happen this year, then you got to imagine that next year with a full year of center under his belt, that he's really going to be a quality offensive lineman in this system.
Yeah, they did. On the depth chart, which is meaningless, as we pointed out, they do have Myslinski as the backup center, and they have Bo Stevens as the backup right guard to Connor Colby. So the question is, Kennington, yet Jennings Dunker was the first team right guard on Kids Day and looked pretty good. So we don't know what they're going to do at right guard. I think that's the biggest question. I think the thing this team needs to do is put Connor Colby at right tackle. I don't think that's a big, outlandish statement. He's got a 6'6", 316-pound frame. They really believe in him. That's a guy you want at right tackle. I mean, that's your Tristan Wirfs. That's your guy that can protect the right side. They like Mason Richmond at left tackle. So it's either going to be Jack Plum at right tackle and Colby at right guard on Saturday, or it's Colby at right tackle and then take your pick at right guard between those three freshmen, which is Myslinski, Stevens, and Dunker, or Nick DeYoung could be part of that mix as well, potentially. But Jack Plum, Ferentz said today, cannot move inside, which we knew. He doesn't play guard. So if you do move Colby out to right tackle, then Plum becomes a second teamer. That'll be a tough pill to swallow for the fifth-year senior, I would imagine. But I just think that Colby just needs to be a tackle, especially what we saw last year from Plum and DeYoung. It just wasn't good enough. I think Richmond and Colby are your tackles of the future. I think they should start their week one.
Yeah, and the thing about Colby, it's like it feels like they've tried to put him at tackle before. Last fall, at the end of the Kids Day scrimmage, Ferentz said that he is one of the 4 tackles in the mix to play. And then because of the injuries on the interior, they put him at right guard. And it seemed like he was going to find his home there in spring. But injuries this fall camp have opened up the door for him to go back to tackle. I'm sure that he performed well there, and we thought that this was going to be the moment where he got a chance to play tackle. It seemed like he's practiced there for so long that now he's going to step into that role. Now he's back at right guard again. But they're keeping that door open. And Ferentz said that, we'll see what happens this weekend as well. So I'm in agreement with you. I feel like it's probably for the best that they put him at right tackle. I think that a lot of it is just going to depend on how confident they are in those 3 options that you named to go down that right guard spot. Once they feel like they have a true solidified option there, I think that's when you're going to see Colby kind of shift out to tackle. And if that's the case, I mean, you really do have to feel really good about where the future of the tackle position is on the team when you have Richmond and Colby this year and for next year as well.
Yeah, and Caden Proctor's coming in. I mean, he could be a day one left tackle potentially, and I know Richmond can play inside. I mean, that would be a pretty salty line if you could have all those guys up front next season. But we won't talk about that. We don't even know what's going to happen Saturday against South Dakota State. Dargan, our producer, you can start the 1-minute music whenever you want. Fun show, Kennington. I think the offensive line will be watch. Freshman will be something to watch. Injuries at wide receiver will be something to watch. And I'm going to put together my own depth chart from here on out. But any final thoughts here in the last 20 seconds?
Yeah, really excited to start this on-camera platform. I think there's a lot of opportunity to do some fun things with the fans, so I'm just excited to get it rolling. And, exciting things are happening at Hawk Central. I can't wait for year 2 on the beat with you.
And we will preview South Dakota State, the game itself. I promise we will dig into that at some point on the Hawk Central Radio Show. Actually, throughout the Hawk Central Radio Show on Wednesday night. Remember, that's 6 to 7 on KXNO. And then, of course, on Saturday after the game, Saturday evening, we will have the post-game podcast in this form, also available on our usual platforms as well. But that's it from Chad Leistikow, Kennington Smith. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you all. Take care.